Welcome to the Cloud Pod, where the forecast is always cloudy. We talk weekly about all things AWS, GCP, and Azure. We are your hosts,
Justin,
Jonathan,
Ryan,
and Matthew.
Episode 233, recorded for the week of October 25th, 2023. Replicator isn't a real product because it isn't spelled with a K. Good evening, Ryan and Matt. How's it going?
Yeah.
I just figured out it's only Wednesday.
What? It's not.
This week will not end.
I thought it was third Monday.
Third Monday. Okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
It's about what it feels like.
Still 2020 though, right?
Yeah. I think so. I don't know what I just say in the opening.
2020, try 3.
We are unfortunately without Jonathan because he's out sick, and none of us were willing to be a British accent with a raspy voice. So he's out, and so we'll get him next week. But thanks, Ryan and Jonathan, who's not here, for covering for us last week, as we had last minute show disasters come up that both I couldn't join, and then Matt had already said he couldn't join before. So appreciate you guys holding down the fort.
Of course.
Can't wait to hear that episode, which gets published after this one gets recorded. So I'm working on it right now. But I'm sure it'll be full of wit and charm of your Britishness, and then Ryan just there.
Yeah. That's correct.
Excellent. All right. Well, we have a little bit of news this week. First up, for those of you who have been ignoring your RDS console, it is now time to update your SSL and TLS certificates for RDS and Aurora because they are expiring in 2024. And if you have a very long change management process, you should probably start this effort now. This is a really fun process that I got to do recently as well. And this really impacts any database created before 2020, as they chose a 10-year CA certificate. But now you can move over to a certificate that expires in 40 years or 100 years. And I definitely went for the 100-year certificate because I never want to do this again. So the step-by-step guide, which they make it sound like it's so easy with 4 simple steps. Step 1, identify your impacted DBs, which you can figure out right away because you go to the RDS console and it tells you in bold, highlighted text that your certificate is going to expire, which is how I found out about this. And I was like, I should fix that proactively because I'm a chump, which I should not have because I should have waited for these instructions. Number 2, you need to determine if your database client and apps require TLS for their connections, and you have to figure out how they're connecting to it and if they're using TLS to do that, which is a surprisingly difficult question to answer if you're using something like WordPress or other third-party product you don't own. And so they give you multiple articles to link to for MariaDB, Microsoft SQL Server, MySQL, Oracle DB, Postgres Aurora, and Postgres Aurora. It's, you got to go select user ID and you can see if their connection type is SSL or TLS. And then there's changes we've done to JDBC and MySQL. And also you have to update the Linux box, which if you're still using Amazon Linux 2, which I was doing, made it slightly more difficult because no one's written up steps for that. And yeah, it was a good time. So I learned, first of all, if you just update the certificate, it will break in a horrible way.
Without the CA, yes.
Yeah, because I was just like, it's an Amazon Linux box. They must have just packaged up as a Yum package, right? Why wouldn't you put it as a Yum package? Just update certificates. No, of course not. Why would we do such a thing? So yes, I got killed by the Linux side of it, not necessarily the MySQL part, because the client's actually pretty dumb for WordPress and PHP. But the root CA on the box was my killer, and I had to go find the instructions how to do that, which I hadn't done in a while because typically I just kill Linux boxes. So I was like, I almost just rebuilt the whole CloudPod site. It almost happened at one point during this process. And then you could, they do recommend you do this on test, which we don't have a test for the CloudPod website because we do everything in prod because that's how we're good ops people. And then step 4, rinse and repeat on production. So there you go. This is not for the faint of heart if you're not familiar with how your database apps work, and do proceed with caution.
I will say that rather than go figure out all the nitty-gritty of how the application works, I would suggest just updating the CA and the certificate, because if it's using TLS, it'll work. If it's not using TLS, still work.
Yeah. So so I've been putting off moving to the new flavor of Amazon Linux, and so there was this point of like, okay, I got to figure out how to update the root certificate, or I have to upgrade to Amazon Linux 2023.
See, that's what I thought you were going to do in the middle of it. Just YOLO it and move completely.
Like it almost happened. Like I contemplated it for quite a while, and I've already looked at that path like 3 or 4 times where I'm just like, okay, I got to get off Amazon Linux 2, and then I get into this whole thing about not really understanding what Fedora is doing and not really wanting to run on a Fedora-based system, and then I'm like, well, I should just move to Rocky Linux, and then I just go down this deep slide of depression. But then it's an ECS image, which I don't actually know if there's a proper ECS image for 2023 yet. Anyways, I just said, no, I'm not going to do it.
These are the type of decisions I have to make all day long in my day job. How about no?
Yeah. How about we wait until the last bitter moment when they finally deprecate that version of Amazon Linux too? And when that happens, then I will be forced to do this, and then I will do it begrudgingly, and I will curse the whole way, and I will share it all with you at the Cloud Pod because that's what I do. But that was more painful than I wanted it to be. So again, take caution, update your certs, and choose the 100-year one because you never want to do this again.
Seriously.
I'm surprised that they put 100-year out of 40-year, and some security department's not going to be screaming like, no, it has to be 370, whatever the number was.
Well, so
days and
so the 40-year one is a 2048-bit RSA certificate. The 100-year one is an RSA 4096 or an ECC 384 compiled. So it's pretty high-level encryption on both of those CAs. And the fun thing about that is if you do choose the 100-year certificate and you have like a T3 class system, all of a sudden now you're processing a lot of stuff to calculate the cipher. So you may have some use cases where you don't want to use the 100-year certificate because it does require some more CPU to process.
Mm-hmm. Every TLS connection, right? Yeah, it's going to have a little bit more overhead. Yeah, I had to do this in 2019 to update it to the one that's expiring now in 2024. So I feel old. And yeah, it was not a lot of fun.
Yeah, I count my work birthdays by how many times I've changed my password because my password is already like 16 characters. And I just had a number to the end of it. So I just know how many times I've done it. And I decided that my next company, which isn't anytime soon, but my next company, I'm going to count down. It's like, I don't want to be here more than this number of password changes. And
you should start with arbitrary long and then go down.
Yeah. I think it's probably my new password solution in the future. All right. For MSK users, cross-cluster Kafka replication is often used to implement business continuity and DR or multi-active regions. And so you typically, if you're using MSK or using Kafka, you're probably very familiar with the open source tool called Mirror Maker and the pain associated with Mirror Maker. Amazon likes to say, it can be complex and time consuming to make it work. Yes, it can be. Thank you, Amazon. And to make it not as painful and to eliminate that toil and those extra drinks that I was going to have when I did this again, Amazon is introducing MSK Replicator, a new capability of MSK that makes it easy to set up cross-region and same-region replication between MSK clusters, scaling automatically to handle your workload, and you can use MSK Replicator with both provisioned and serverless MSK clusters. You can set up either active-active clusters or active-passive setups, and you pay per gigabyte of replicated data on an hourly rate for each replicator in addition to the base cost of MSK. So per hour cost is 30 cents, which is a steal of a deal if you run Mirror Maker. And per gigabyte cost is 8 cents per gigabyte.
Yeah. Now, this is one of those services where I'm so glad they introduced this just because Mirror Maker is not that bad as long as everything works fine and nothing changes.
And when has that occurred for
Never
you?
once. It's no application. Like most applications are designed to introduce change as part of their functionality. So yeah, and so monitoring this and dealing with the failure modes and all that, having that be part of a managed service that I can leverage, fantastic.
Even Mirror Maker itself setting up, like I helped set up, I think once or twice now, was like a multi-month project to set up Kafka and Mirror Maker and everything else. So even if, let's say, I press the button and it takes as long as RDS takes to spin up, it's still exponentially faster than it would take for me to manually do it. Like, this is a godsend.
Yeah. So what I really want to know is like how they handle. So most of the Mirror Maker stuff is actually trying to handle the translation between going to multiple clusters on the app side. So I wonder if the MSK version is a complete abstraction where you're calling the same sort of global endpoint. I doubt it because that's not really Amazon style. But
or would you rather just say, "Here, take my money, and solve it for me, and never think about it again"? Because that's where I am with this project. Like normally, I'm like, I want to understand how you do it, and this is one of those where I'm like, I don't want to understand how you do it. Good luck.
Well, last week, Jonathan and Ryan, I'm sure, talked about Windows Server 2012 and gave it a farewell goodbye and good luck to you in your retirement, good sir. It then told you that if you're running on Azure, though, you can continue to get support and be in really great shape and never have to upgrade your products ever again, because that's Microsoft's way of making more Azure money. Mm-hmm. And then this week, Google said, we're going to support Windows 20 Server 2012 too, even after the end of support. And I was like, oh, that's really nice of them to do that. Are they going to provide patches or things? And then I read it. Microsoft, it only works for purchasing extended security updates from Microsoft, which is not the same thing. So if you're paying Microsoft more money to get extended security updates, you can now keep running your 2012 box on top of Google, which you could have done without the extended support as well. You just would be out of compliance. Google then also pointed out that you can easily upgrade to Windows 2016 by either deploying a new instance or doing an upgrade in place, which don't do an upgrade in place of Windows ever. So appreciate this article for nothing. Thank you, Google. I feel sort of insulted.
I want to know you're paying around trying to upgrade in place, and who decided that was a good idea at the time?
Yeah, you only do it once.
I mean, Google read the docs and said that you could do it. And they said, well, we'll just put it in the blog article that you can do that. Or they asked Bard, and Bard told you can upgrade Windows 2012 in place. Because Bard is an idiot.
No, it actually was OpenAI.
Yeah.
Maybe OpenAI.
It's OpenAI that told you to do it.
Yeah. Sure as it did.
I feel like this is a blog announcement for them just not removing this from the image library, right? Because someone complained when they did. And they're like, but I purchased extended support.
Well, it's a little bit of a weird thing because you technically are buying your Windows license from Google. So like to get extended security updates, how do I do that when I don't own the license? So I'm a little perplexed about how that's actually supposed to work. Like, are you going to sell that to me in the marketplace, Google? No, of course not. It's not mentioned at all. But yeah, that's annoying.
Have you been waiting months and months to hire your new AWS, GCP, or Azure architect, only to have them be poached at the 11th hour by a startup with a juice bar? Initiatives stalled because you're having trouble hiring? Well, I have a simple solution: Foghorn Consulting. Foghorn Consulting provides top-notch cloud engineers to the world's most innovative companies and can be burning down your DevOps and cloud backlogs as soon as next week. Foghorn certified AWS, GCP, and Azure professionals are armed with infrastructure as code, and from day one will be designing performant, optimized cloud-native or hybrid environments that deliver on the promise of cloud. Their FogOps solution even provides on-demand cloud engineering to augment your existing teams. Visit www.foghornconsulting.com or send an email to cloudtalentnow@foghornconsulting.com and tell them the CloudPod sent you. Your dedicated FogOps team is with you for the long haul, and they bring their own juice.
The Microsoft Azure Incubations Team, which I didn't know existed, has launched a new product called Radius, a new open application platform for the cloud. They're saying cloud computing has evolved, and developers and operations teams support many complex microservice-based applications. Do we ever? While Kubernetes is an enabler, many customers are building abstractions over Kubernetes, usually focused on compute, to work around Kubernetes limitations. No. Kubernetes has no formal definition of an application. It mingles infrastructure and application concepts and is overwhelmingly complex. Over time, developers need things like support for dependencies such as API front ends, key value stores, caches, and observability systems. And amidst these challenges for developers, their corporate IT counterparts also must enforce an ever-growing matrix of corporate standards, compliance, and security. So the Azure Incubation Team is giving you Radius to address those challenges. This will help your app team where they are supporting proven technologies like Kubernetes, existing infrastructure tools like Terraform and Bicep, and integrating of CI and CD systems. Radius enables developers to understand their apps beyond just Kubernetes, as well as it meets the cost, ops, and security requirements of your business. So this is just one more of the many developer portals that are existing out there, like from many vendors like Backstage and Spotify and others. There's a quote here from Comcast VP of Developer Experience, Paul Roach. Radius is strongly aligned with our platform engineering vision to enable Comcast engineers to innovate at the speed of thought. We are prototyping on Radius to understand how Comcast might both consume and contribute to this promising open source project.
Yeah, this is a funny reaction to shift left, right? Like it's one of those things like we've put a lot of a lot of systems in place to empower development and people to own their own systems. And then it's sort of like, oh, and now what? I have to be an expert in everything, and it doesn't scale. And so now this is sort of I think the platform engineering and all the developer sort of dashboards we're seeing is sort of a response to that, which is like, how do we all play nice in the same pool and figure out how to carve off responsibilities, which is good. I like tools like this. I do think it's necessary, and I think it's a gap.
It's just sort of funny because when it was an ops problem, no one cared. But when it became a dev issue, all of a sudden they all started coding solutions.
That's why you do it that way, right? Move your problems to the heroes. The heroes will fix it.
Yeah. Have you guys had any experience with these developer portals and Kubernetes management tiers?
I mean, I've rejected almost every one that I've seen. This one has a lot of promise, and because it fills the gaps in why I haven't used something like OpenShift or something like that, which only focuses on part of the problem, right? And so I've seen, certain tools come close. You have a lot of enablers for managing, complex ecosystems of applications, largely just managing the Kubernetes layer and not the caching service of your cloud provider of choice, or your S3 bucket, which has all of your application secrets in it, those types of things. And so this is sort of I hope the promise of this is that it does sort of put all that in one place and offer that sort of service catalog that doesn't suck to maintain and provide that visualization layer where you can keep it all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't I liked all the concepts of it, but I still dislike Kubernetes launching my buckets and my load balancers and everything else, because I've just seen too many times someone goes in and goes, oh, let me go tweak this one file, and all of a sudden, they go do a deploy and their S3 bucket gets deleted, and crazy stuff like that because the developer doesn't understand the ramifications. And they do it in dev and it's yeah, okay, whatever. Our load balancer got disabled, but then and recreated. Cool. It's not really a big deal. Great. Let's go deploy that in production. Oh, we just took down our whole website as AWS launches a new NLP for me. There's just issues like that I feel where the developers really need to fully understand the ramifications of what they're doing. And most developers don't want to because they have other things to do. And understanding how the infrastructure is going to interact with all these different layers just is troublesome for a lot of people and isn't with their core competency. And why throw everything onto the developer at one point, because it just it isn't what they do. They don't need to understand the infrastructure piece.
Can we talk about what a VP of developer experience does? I don't know what that does.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have some ideas, but I think it's someone could say that could be, developer productivity, or it could be someone who's running internal services, or the leader in charge of CI/CD for a company and maybe release. I don't know. It could be all kinds of things.
So I've Googled that. Mm-hmm. Oh, actually, I went to Bard.
Okta has a job position.
I went to Bard. Okta needs a lot of positions right now, mostly in security.
Why would you say that?
Yeah.
What password?
Just a few issues. Just a few. Yeah. So I went to Bard and I asked it what a VP of developer experience does. And it says it's responsible for developing and executing strategies that engage and support developers, drive developer adoption of their products and technologies, and foster a vibrant developer ecosystem around their company. Some of the things that they may do, develop and execute a developer experience strategy. Overseeing the development and maintenance of developer docs, tutorials, and other resources, creating and running developer processes, hackathons, meetups, and conferences, working with the product team to ensure that developer feedback is incorporated into the product roadmap, advocating for developer needs within the company, and building and maintaining relationships with the developer community. So it could be either external or internal. And this sounds like my next job, so I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
Because that sounds like a cakewalk compared to what I do today.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of someone who can champion the developer experience and get that feedback into the product. Because that's,
if I can get them to own CI/CD as well, I think I would definitely appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyone else, but yeah.
Anyone else.
I'll own my CI/CD, but the platform?
Yeah.
So sick of doing that.
We have an Oracle announcement this week. Oracle is unveiling Java development extensions for Visual Studio Code. Oracle has released the Java development extension for VSCode, which is a great way to get you high on your Java licenses. The extension covers the development cycle from editing, compiling, debugging, and testing. And the initial release offers features such as project view, auto-completion, error highlighting, and jump to definition capabilities, along with unit testing support for JUnit, available to you in the Visual Studio Marketplace. And yeah, you can then pay Oracle a lot of money, because I'm sure it doesn't support all the other open source JDKs you could have used.
Yeah. So to use this, you open your command pilot, and then you just enter the command prepare for lawsuit. Perfect.
Yeah. You go, brew install Java. So first you get that license on there, and then this plugin notifies the lawyers at Oracle that you installed Java, and then they call your company and they say, "Hey, Ryan and your team just installed Java, and now you owe us $1 million."
Yeah,
it's perfect. So if you don't already have your licensing, don't use this. And that's it for our news this week. A quick and dirty show.
Quiet week, yeah.
Yeah, quiet. It was nice.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm doing show notes and like how many stories I had to kill. And there was 17 Azure AI stories around, innovation and partners and sustainability and AI and making your AI responsible. And I just said, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Azure, you got to try harder than that.
It's so hard to weed through. I want to hear about advancements in AI and a new cool thing that it can do, but there's so much noise.
So much noise.
I was going to say, I think this is the first week that there hasn't been an AI story.
Mostly because they were specifically the Azure stories that were like, I can't talk about that again. I don't care about their partners. I don't care about how they're being responsible with their AI. I just don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care anymore. I heard you guys had a revolt against instance types next week.
We did. We took our inch of freedom and we totally unilaterally said, no, we don't want to talk about it anymore. Instance types for the same reason. Cool.
Yeah. Everyone's upgrading all of their Intel and AMD processors to the latest generation. So everyone's going to have these stories. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can just make that an editorial decision. We don't have to talk about those anymore. You did talk last week about the $1 billion Amazon purchase of Office 365, which I find, all I can think about is oh my God, I would not want to manage $1 billion spend of Office 365. And then number two, I was thinking, poor Matt, he's not going to be able to get any capacity for anything in his cloud for years because
ever again.
Yeah. You're going to be in the same boat we are where you're capacity planning your Azure.
Office 365 doesn't take
why don't we have any capacity? Because Amazon's taking it all, trying to make Office scale.
Yeah. Amazon rolled out a new spam or phishing, exercise that's eating all the compute.
Yeah. Actually, a long time ago, I was talking to someone and they were talking about how they open up new offices and every new office has a Amazon, they had a whole automated Amazon deployment for AWS and it included SharePoint and Exchange and all this. And I was like, oh, why are you guys doing all that? And your other choice is Google, which is also competing with you. So you have,
right.
It's what pick your poison.
Yeah.
Or you could have just made Work Docs work better.
Or work at all.
Yeah. No. Or work mail. Yeah, no, there's a lot there. I think $1 billion when using Work Docs or work mail, it makes sense. That tracks. I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Cheaper. It's cheaper to pay at Microsoft.
Yeah. Especially for their scale and their email volume. I'm sure it's absolutely massive. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Hopefully back with Jonathan. And we got lots of good news next week, including earnings next week. We skipped it this week because Amazon is not announcing earnings till tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But we already know how Google and Microsoft did. And it's tale of two journeys, one bad, one good. So we'll see how Amazon did next week.
Just remind me to pull my headphones out as soon as we start that because I forget every time.
No, that's the fun.
That's the fun part.
Yeah. So just look on camera for Jonathan and my faces. That's scars. That's years of just
Indeed. All right. See you guys next week.
All right.
See ya.
And that is the Week in Cloud. We'd like to thank our sponsor, Foghorn Consulting. Subscribe on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and tweet us your feedback at #TheCloudPod. Or join our Slack channel. Go to our website, thecloudpod.net for sign-up instructions. So Matt had a brilliant idea before the show while we were trying to figure out the show title. And he was like, we really should have a title that uses off of our after show. And I was like, yeah, but the after show is the bonus that only people who are cool know about when they're listening to the after show and us ranting about whatever we're going to rant about. And so then I came up with the idea, well, we should just come up with a show title for the after show. And so the after show has its own show title, which this week is much like my sanity. My observability costs are spiraling into depression, which is from this article about observability costs spiraling out of control. So apparently a survey of 200 DevOps professionals in mid-sized organizations with revenue of 50 to 500 million revealed challenges in controlling observability costs. The The survey was conducted by Wakefield Research for Edge Delta, found that 98% of respondents experience cost overages or unexpected spikes a few times a year, with 51% encountering such issues monthly. The primary cause of cost spikes were product launches and updates, and mistakenly including log data for ingestion. No. 93% of respondents say that their leadership teams are aware of rising observability costs, and 91% expected increased scrutiny to reduce costs in the next year. And 84% believe they are paying more than they should for observability, even when limited log data ingestion. And I agree, observability tools are expensive, but they should add value to your business by making it easier to detect issues, easier to troubleshoot, reduce your MTTR and MTTF. And so those are the metrics you should be tracking to justify why you're spending all this money. But yeah, logs are the bane of everyone's existence in observability for sure.
Well, the thing that, is often overlooked is the fact that we've always been paying this cost, right? It's just what we're using technologies and services now where that cost is just very obvious. But, when you think about the amount of hard drive space that you've purchased, in your 5-year approval plan, type of thing, like it always includes a little bit of a premium for housing a whole bunch of data that you don't know what is. A lot of it is logs. Now, our scale is big, so we just use tools like Elasticsearch and Splunk, and we want to search them. We don't want to troll through gigabytes of log, and that compute is now, it used to be part of your platform running on-prem or part of your Splunk license, and now these tools are just like the cloud where you're getting invoiced and you're getting metrics per the gigabyte, and it's expensive. And so you go look and you're like, this is all garbage.
I think it's really the second piece of what you said is you're now using them. I mean, like before you would go jump on, and you're aggregating them. I feel like in the past, if you aggregated them, it was like syslog or rsyslog or whatever, one of those ones, which pumped it somewhere, but you looked at it, you tailed a log, and that's about it. Now you're looking for correlations, error counts per minute, to see if you're seeing spikes, which is really what you were talking about, which is the compute aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
So while the log ingestion is a piece of it, now you're perpetually running metrics and alerts and stuff like that against it. And then because of all that, now you have to have the, extra cost of, everything else on top of it, which is why it's, processed by gigabyte and everything else. And we now rely on external vendors versus like an rsyslog setup. Because now we want logs not just from, our Linux boxes, but from our Windows, if you're lucky, like me, or, if you're a cloud provider or any third party that you're using, you want everything in one place.
Your serverless functions.
Did you say you're lucky for dealing with Windows logs?
It was sarcasm.
It might be. It might have been sarcastic.
It might have been. It was
been
unclear to me that was sarcasm. I think you were excited about it. That's what I heard.
As much as I was excited about the other day when someone asked me if we SSH to our Windows servers every day, and I was like, while I know that's technically plausible, what?
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, in true after show, we've digressed.
Yeah. That's what after show's for. But I mean, I think the other reality, like I was thinking back to like Splunk back in 2005-ish, and talking to Splunk and like, hey, we're gonna buy Splunk, and they're like, okay, we'll give you a gigabyte license for $100K a year, and you're like, oh, it's kind of expensive, but Splunk, awesome, gigabyte, that's a ton of logs and blah blah. And now it's like a single microservice can use up a gigabyte of log in like seconds, if misconfigured. And the reality is, I think we actually have a massive problem in distribution of microservices, and that we now added tracing, we've added more services, more logs. So I do think there is a very high cost that we are incurring in this distributed nature of microservices and Kubernetes that we're only just now starting to really feel a lot of pain about it. And so I think it's twofold. I think there is definitely bad logging practices out there and bad behaviors. Those behaviors have existed forever. And yes, they were sunk costs that no one saw because they were on the data center. And now the only way to actually troubleshoot an application is to use logs. The only way to actually figure these things out is to look at multiple systems and trace IDs and these things. And so now the value of that data is much greater and it's much more required. And there's also way more of it to sift through and deal with. So I think it is a combination of problems, but definitely, these systems are expensive and they're expensive for a reason. And can you get value out of them is the big question.
I mean, there's no silver bullet because there are multiple issues, but you also see, people logging every transaction or logging every, incoming request, whereas there are more modern practices where if you instrument your code so you can do tracing through those, you just wouldn't log the same thing. So we're seeing a lot of people, I think it's a bit of a sea change as people adapt to, how they develop locally, using logs or using print statements and to debug stuff, but then also moving that into production where you want to make those log statements sort of tunable and rely more on your tracing and your different instrumentation there. And so like it's a bit of a problem. I think some of it is tech debt and some of it's just bad practice.
Well, yeah, and the developers, they're like, cool, we need these logs. Or like, hey, this, we need this log at one point, so therefore we leave it in forever in our code base. And it's like, no, get what you need, and then we can always rerun the same tests with it in trace, debug, whatever higher level of logging is, for your application. And then there's always the fun, like, hey, it works if it's on debugging. It doesn't work when it's on, info.
That is my favorite error to troubleshoot.
Definitely have never.
When the error goes away. Yeah. When you've changed it. That is truly my favorite error condition. You're like, this makes no sense. I just want to go home now. Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was starting to look, I was talking with one company. They were like, yeah, we figured that our observability platform should be anywhere from 10 to 20% of our cloud costs per month. And I was like, that feels high, but it probably realistically isn't.
Yeah,
it's a cost. You need to make sure you're using it. And I feel like most people don't use that cost.
Yeah, because it's value, right? Like there's cost, but if the cost is super high and you're getting the value out of it, then you'll pay it. And I think that's a big problem with logs and observability in general is that, you're only using it largely when things are going well. And it's only in an emergency that you need it. And so I don't know how many times, patches to failures have been just increased logging output for certain functions or changing where it enters into this loop so that it will log, kind of thing. And so like it is very challenging there because it's hard to develop for the failure state.
All right. Well, that's all I got this week. Anything else?
I could talk for like 30 more minutes on logs.
I mean, I know. That's why I'm trying to stop you now. Yeah.
So Ryan, tell us about Elasticsearch. I hear you like that too.
That actually reminds me. So there was a show title a topic I did not include in here, which was Amazon OpenSearch service announces new administrative options.
Nice.
And I was just reading through it, and I was like, this isn't really worthy to talk about, but it provides more granular control over troubleshooting potential issues with your cluster, which it's Elasticsearch, so it's a real lot. The options with the ability to restart the OpenSearch process on a node and the ability to restart a data node. And I was like, really? You just added that now? Because that's all I ever had to do on Elasticsearch was do that constantly to make this thing work. So yeah, no shock there. Yeah. And then apparently they also giving you key health parameters for anomalies and taking corrective actions to help keep your cluster stable. And I'm like, sure you are, because that's all you're doing.
Yeah. Until you're auto-tuning my indexes and your shards allocations for those indexes, like, nah.
Yeah, exactly.
Everything else it's already wrong and broken, and I'm just having to do things now.
Yeah. So yeah, I almost put it in there just because I wanted to hear you rant about Elasticsearch, but I decided not to.
That'd be a longer show.
Yeah. All right, guys.
I poked the bear at the end. I'm sorry.
Let's wait for Jonathan to get back, and then we can truly
poke the bear at the logging and the disasters of logging. Step 1, get a logging standard. Step 2, convince developers your developer experience guy to do the logging standard. That's what the job could be.
That's what the job is. It absolutely would be.
Oh, God.
Okay. Now I don't want the job anymore.
I was just saying, you still want that job?
Nope.
Awesome.
I'm passed on that now. Yeah. All right, guys. Talk to you next week.
All right.
Have a good one, guys.
Bye.